Welcome into the Commanders Report by Chance Sports, presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and on today's show, got my Week 3 preseason preview for you guys, where I've got 13 Commanders players that need a strong performance in Washington's preseason finale versus the Baltimore Ravens here this week. Now, we're actually going to be going live for this game, guys, on this channel. It's all going to start 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday night, 30 minutes of pregame coverage before the 6 o'clock kick. Then also live Q&A throughout the course of the game. We've got live play-by-play and analysis, so you guys know exactly what you're watching on screen here in this preseason finale, and then also a post-game show to follow. So if you guys never want to miss any of our free live watch parties here on the Commanders Report for Commanders games this year, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And with that, let's get into our list here, starting with the offensive players. Where I think Robert Henry Jr. is coming into a really big week with Jeremy McNichols injured right now. He's likely to start the season on the PUP list. Jerome Ford's season is over with a season-ending injury. He's been placed on IR. That opens up an opportunity for Robert Henry Jr. to make the final 53-man roster. The problem is, ever since that opportunity has opened up, he has played terrible. He had a fumble in the joint practice versus the Ravens this week. He had a fumble last week against Detroit when he was returning a kick late in the game. If we see the version of Robert Henry Jr. as a running back that we saw versus the Miami Dolphins 2 weekends ago, there's a chance he could make this team as its fourth running back. But if we see the version of Henry that we've seen of late, he's probably going to be a practice squad player and not make the 53. So he's definitely going to be a guy to watch in this one. But then also Craig Reynolds will be somebody to keep an eye on as well. Because he's somebody that's coming in here that's kind of a veteran of this style of scheme, coming over from the Detroit Lions. Very similar in play style to Jeremy McNichols. So listen, he could be the Jeremy McNichols short-term replacement in this running back room, especially if Robert Henry Jr. doesn't, rise to the occasion and to the challenge here. I think Reynolds is a very solid fourth running back depth option, where if Henry is not going to be able to put together a good game this week, I think Reynolds could step up in that fourth running back role. And then a pair of wide receivers here that I think really need to have strong games is Dyami Brown and Van Jefferson. If this team is going to keep 7 wide receivers, I would say that 7th receiver is either going to be Brown or Jefferson. 2 veterans here. Obviously, Brown, I think, has a little bit of an edge here because he has played with Jayden Daniels and played very well with Jayden Daniels. He was a big part of that playoff run a couple of years ago here in Washington. So to have a player that has that established chemistry, especially when it matters most, as a depth piece in this wide receiver room would be nice. But Van Jefferson's been complimented a lot by this coaching staff and has even made some nice plays here during the preseason for Washington. So I do think that final wide receiver spot will be on the line. And depending on who plays better in this game between these two men, that person might end up getting that final wide receiver spot. And then Matt Gulbin going into a game here where obviously this team, at least to this point, as of me recording this video, has not brought in Graham Glasgow, has not brought in any outside options at this point. We're still waiting on Nick Allegretti to get back. He will not be playing in this preseason finale this week. But Gulbin should be getting a lot of work at center. They have moved Julian Good-Jones to play to start playing guard now. So it seems like Gulbin might even be playing the entirety of this third preseason game to get him reps, to see what he can do before maybe making a decision before the start of the regular season. Because remember, you have that buffer week now where it's not like after the third preseason game, you're playing a regular season game in 8 or 9 days, right? It's you have that buffer week to get your team ready after the preseason is over. So if Gulbin plays well in this game, maybe they even give him a chance to start week 1, especially if Nick Allegretti isn't ready to go. But if not, and Gulbin struggles like he did, frankly, in the joint practice versus the Ravens this week, we could be looking at the Commanders making a move at the center position before we line it up on week 1 versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, coming up next here in the Commanders Report, we've got my defensive players to watch in this game, in this preseason finale here versus the Ravens. But before we get into the rest of today's show, I want to tell you about our presenting sponsor here at Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Preseason football is here, and there isn't a better place to cash in on your football takes this season than with our friends at Prize Picks. The app is really easy to use. You just pick more than or less than on a few player stat projections and then lock in your lineup. You guys can take a look here at my season-long lineup for the NFC East on the Prize Picks app this year, where I'm taking the more on rushing touchdowns for Jayden Daniels, the more on receiving touchdowns for Terry McLaurin, and the less on 300-plus passing yard performances for Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts. This is what's called a power play on the PrizePicks app. So if I can get all three of these projections correct, I'm walking away with 6 times my money. So for this particular lineup, a $20 entry fee gets me $120 in winnings. And best of all, guys, PrizePicks just switched their offer for you. All you have to do is play your first $5 lineup with code HMA, and if you win that lineup, you get $150 in additional lineups. Because of this new offer, there's not a better time to join than right now, right before the start of football season. So lock in and win that first lineup today. One more time, that's code HMA at sign up to get $150 in bonus lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. Click the link in the comments and description to download the app today. As always, play responsibly, and a big thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring us here at the Commanders Report. Now we'll start our defensive players to watch this week with a trio of defensive tackles that could all make a case to make this final roster. Ricky Barber, Maurice Hurst, and Bryan Cowart. All these guys have shown some good things in the preseason to this point, but I do think that there's probably only one roster spot for these 3 players that's going to be available at the end of the day. Maybe 2 of them can sneak on the roster here, but I think that at the end of the day, with Jerzon Newton not making the team, obviously, he's going to be on IR this year, most likely. Ending his season, you could put, Ricky Barber to replace his spot, Maurice Hurst or Bryan Cowart. It really does depend on who finishes strongest to finish this preseason, and then maybe the other 2 will be delegated to the practice squad. Then Javontae Jean-Baptiste, I think he's got a decent chance to make the final roster just because of the injuries that the Commanders are dealing with at the edge rusher position right now. It'll be interesting to see if Jean-Baptiste can do a good job this week and really solidify his standing on this roster, or if he's just going to be more of a practice squad player for the team this season. And then Sonny Styles, man, as the number 7 overall pick. Obviously, this team passed up the opportunity to trade down and get additional picks. They believed in this young man that much, and to this point, he's looked a bit uncomfortable out there. Now, Dan Quinn has talked about how they haven't been super aggressive blitzing him yet or in getting him downhill or anything like that at this point, so it's possible that he plays better and he's more comfortable once we get into the season, but to this point, it hasn't been fantastic. Would love to see him have a standout performance here in his 3rd preseason game to really put our minds at ease that this guy can be an impact player in year 1 for the Washington Commanders defense. Then another linebacker that's under some pressure here is Kain Medrano. Could make the team as a special teams player, but he could also be delegated to the practice squad. If he has a strong game in this one, there's a chance that he could potentially make this team. If not, he's probably going to be more of a practice squad guy. And then the final 2 players I'm going to be watching here are Fabien Moreau and Antonio Hamilton Sr., a pair of veteran corners that I think are probably battling for one last roster spot as a depth cornerback behind the starters heading into the season. And maybe it's possible that both these guys make the team, especially with Trey Amos still dealing with his injury and Dan Quinn sounding a little bit suspicious that he might not be able to start the season this year, which is not what Commanders fans want to hear, but maybe that is a possibility. But there might just be one more roster spot available, and I think that Moreau and Hamilton have played pretty darn well. I think at this point, Rasul Douglas has made the team, so there might just be one more outside cornerback spot left, and it might come down to who plays better between Moreau and Hamilton in this game. So pick one to keep for me down there in the comment section. Which one do you think would be the better fit to be on this 53-man roster for this season? Type FN for Fabien Moreau or AH for Antonio Hamilton Sr. Let me know what you guys are thinking to finish up today's show. And that'll be it for this week's preview for Commanders versus Ravens. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of today's video. We're going to be going, of course, live for this game on Friday evening. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Join us at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time Friday evening. And until then, guys, go raise some hail.